Please join me in Gasho. I know how truly grievous it is that I, Gotoku Shinran, am sinking in the immense ocean of desires and attachments and are lost in the vast mountains of fame and advantage. Namo Yutsu. Namo Yutsu. Namo Yutsu. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank Reverend Matt for giving me a wonderful introduction. I hope I can keep up to his standards. I'm very grateful to be here. I'd like to thank Reverend Harada for inviting me. It's kind of a special meaning for me because actually I started my ministry 10 years ago. And I don't know if some of you remember or not, but I actually trained under Reverend Bach here for about 6 weeks. And I remember very clearly how intimidated I was by the size of the Sangha, and I still am. This is twice the size of what it is at Placer. Before I go into my Dharma talk, one of the things about the infant presentation service that reminds me of a wonderful memory I have from Fresno. Fresno was my first assignment, and the Rinban at that time was Reverend Miyagi. Very traditional Japanese minister. He was 18th generation Jogoshinshu minister. Amazing, huh? So whenever we did anything, we did it the old-fashioned Japanese way. And you know what we didn't do this morning with the infant presentation? What they normally do is you take a red stamp, and you put their foot on it, and then you put it on a piece of paper. So my very first year I was there, we had 10 kids, and I was the associate minister, so guess who got to do the foot pressing? And guess what color shirt I was wearing? And guess what color I was afterwards? I actually had a really nice red footprint right here all through the service. I do have special memories of here because I actually know a lot of the ministers here because I was part of the original group for Reverend Patty, Reverend Grace, the Castles. We all went to Japan together and went through Tokudo. And this is so funny because I really have fond memories of Reverend Peter. Most of you remember Reverend Peter, of course. And I didn't know who he was. And so we met at the BCA headquarters before we went to Japan. And in come the people from Sacramento, and they go, "We're Team Sacramento." And Peter says, "Yes, we are." So then when we went to Tokudo, Peter, being the personality that he was, he says, "Okay, Kurt, you're going to do this. Patty, you're going to do this. You're going to do that." I'm like, "Oh, I don't know what this guy is like." And so we actually got through training because of Peter's background, and I have fond memories of him. So Kotane is a special celebration. I do thank the choir for singing this very beautiful, one of my favorite songs, and for the kids coming in. You know, in our BCA, it's very rare for us to have a Chigo procession, so it's beautiful. But we are celebrating Kotane, which is the birthday of our founder, Shinran Shonin. I was 25 years old when I was first introduced to Buddhism. And so I remember the very first day that I walked into the Seattle Betsuing about 30 years ago. How many of you remember the first time you walked into church? Okay, I see some hands here. So for me, very good, young Christians. So if you come into the church for the first time, this is very exotic and very confusing, isn't it? You've got the statue, and then you got these two Japanese guys up there, and there's all this smoke and incense. And Reverend Castro was my mentor. I have great respect for Reverend Castro. He has since retired. And so I go, "Oh, that's an unusual statue of Shakyamuni Buddha." "Ow, that's not Shakyamuni Buddha, that's Amida Buddha." "Well, who's that guy?" "Oh, that's Shinran Shonin. He's the founder of our denomination." "What is he doing in the Onaiji?" And then on the other side is Renyo, his great-grandson. So I remember going in with my very calculating mind thinking, what is all this stuff? Who are these people? And I have to admit, the first several years that I went to the Seattle Temple, I did not have much of an appreciation of Shinran Shonin, the founder of our denomination. But I was very fortunate because we had a lot of, at that time, the Betsuing had 3 ministers. What a treat in this day and age, how we had 3 ministers, so they would cycle through almost a different speaker every week. And I started learning a little bit about Shinran Shonin, and I learned to start to appreciate him. Because one of the value points of Shinran Shonin is that he did not consider himself a special person. Okay? Do you think that's true? Do you think they're all dressed up for no special reason? One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Shinran Shonin did not start to create a new school of Buddhism, which we call now Jodo Shinshu. What his purpose in life was to clarify the Pure Land teachings for all of the Japanese ministers and nobility, because at that time in history, they said that the Nembutsu was not real Buddhism. So Shinran, with all of his great knowledge from being on Mount Hiei for over 20 years, was a very academic person. And what he did was he spent the last 20 years of his life writing down the justification and the reasoning behind our school of Buddhism. How many of you have a copy of the collected works of Shinran, besides the ministers? Okay, good. So this is actually amazing. This has been translated into English. How long do you think it took them in Japan to translate this into English? Yeah? How put a 0 on that? It'd be 20. Yeah, isn't that amazing? It took them 20 years to translate this into English. And this is all of his writings. And what's nice about it is that Shinran, during his lifetime, would write letters. So we have his Kyogyo Shinsho, which is his writings, but in this edition we also have his letters. And one of the nice things, and I'm sure Reverend Matt and others that have studied the Dharma, is you're thinking about a question, and I remember one time I came across a letter and it was like Shinran was writing me an answer. It was a very moving moment. It's like this letter is 800 years old and it's like he's answering my question now. So as we know, Shinran Shonin was born in 1173. That's a long time ago. And at that time in Japanese history, do you think the Japanese were rich and had lots of fancy things? No, it was a very trying time. And so Shinran Shonin, at the age of 8 years old, what do you think his parents did with him? What would you want to do at 8 years old? They took him to the monastery. Can you believe that? Do you want to go to the monastery? You want to become a monk at 8 years old? So for us living in a modern America, that seems very strange. But the reason was they wanted their son to be educated and they wanted him to be well-fed. So he became a monk at 8 years old. He was such a good monk that he actually got to go to Mount Hiei, which is the head school of the Tendai school of Buddhism. Have any of you been to Mount Hiei? Oh, just a couple people. It's a wonderful place. I know. Remember, Matt will say yes to everything. That's why he's sitting on the other side. So Mount Hiei is a mountain. If you go visit it today, do you know how you get up there? Oh, I couldn't walk that up. You take a bus that goes up a hill like this. They've got cable cars. But what is at the top of the mountain is a complex of different temples. And this is where Shinran studied when he was a monk. Actually, on a study tour from BCA, we got to go to Mount Hiei. And we went to the temple where Shinran was studying. And I love this story. So you go into the temple, traditional Japanese temple, but instead of Amida, they have a statue of Shinran. And the story goes is that Shinran was staying at this temple, but then during the night he would sneak out and he would go down to Kyoto to listen to Honen, his teacher. I can't imagine going down the mountain like that. So his head monk said, there's something going on. Somebody is sneaking out at night. I've got to figure out who it is. So the monks were used to eating just, barely any rice and umeboshi, right? So he put little bowls of soba outside all of the ministers' little rooms. And if they got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, they'd see the soba and they would eat it really quick because it was a treat. Okay? So the head monk was smart. He says, whoever's bowl is still there in the morning, I know that's the person that snuck out. Okay? So the other monks knew that Shinran was going down to the Kyoto to hear Honen talk about Pure Land Buddhism, and they were worried in the morning because they looked and his bowl of soba was still there. And they're thinking, oh, should we take it and hide it? No, that would not be good. So they all go, and then Shinran comes in, and they're all surprised, and the bowl's gone. What's that? So they go in, and they sit down in front of the statue of Amida. Shinran goes like this and looks up at the statue, and there's a soba noodle out of Amida's mouth. This is supposed to be true. I saw it, I was there. But for me, this was an important lesson, because even if Shinran didn't go every day down to Kyoto, which took a long time on the bus, that shows how dedicated he was to hearing the different teachings of the Pure Land teachings. At that time, the Pure Land teachings were repressed by the emperor. And so what they did was they took all the major leaders of Pure Land Buddhism and sent them into exile. So all of those leaders went all over to different places in Japan. Do you think it worked for them to send them into exile? No, they propagated. So it actually backfired for the emperor. And this is the part of the story that I can really relate to, because Shinran was defrocked. Do you know what defrocked is? That means he was no longer a monk. They took away his Buddhist name, and he was given a layperson's name, and he was sent to a province that was called Ichigo, which is on the Sea of Japan side. On the study tour I went on, we got to go there, and it's still very primitive. And again, the idea of Shinran being an everyday person, you have to realize that in ancient Japan, most people didn't travel very far from where they lived, right? So Shinran supposedly had never seen the ocean. Okay? What would it be like if you've never seen the ocean and they told you to go in a little skinny boat and go out until you can find a place to live? What would you think? Okay. So this is the human side of Shinran. Even though I'm an American and I'm living 800 years after his lifetime, this is what I appreciate. Instead of making Shinran this great superhero, they admit Shinran was terrified. He was terrified of the water. He was scared to get into the boat. And so if you look at, do you see my wakesa? My thing around my neck? If you look at it really closely, this is from the 750th anniversary of Shinran Shonin's passing. And what they chose to represent, if you can look at it, is beautiful waves done in a Japanese style art, classical art. What this is acknowledging that the most difficult time for Shinran, acknowledging that he was a person, that he did have concerns and was not the superhero. One of Shinran's contemporaries at that time was Nichiren, and he also got sent into exile. Do you know what his image is? If you see the pictures of Nichiren, he is on the edge of the boat with his nenju and he's going forward. He was that confident. I can relate personally to Shinran Shonin a lot better than I could Nichiren. So again, when Shinran was sent into exile, he was defrocked. That means he was no longer a monk. His hair was growing out. He's wearing tattered robes. And the people in the village say, he's a criminal. What, do we want him here? Now, I don't know about you, but if I had been defrocked and sent into exile, I think that I might kind of be self-centered and not worry about other people. But Shinran became part of the community. He started farming, and most importantly, he started teaching the Pure Land teachings to the residents. So again, another place that I feel comfortable with Shinran is that he did not back down. He continued on. And as we all know, he eventually fell in love and married Shini, which is revolutionary. I'm going to be talking in my classes later today about the first impressions of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, and we kind of take for granted that he was married and had a wife. Radically different. First time in history a Buddhist monk said, "This is my wife." There were other monks that had girlfriends and children, but they were not married. So Shinran lived in the countryside for many, many years. And there's stories that about his wife, Shini, wrote letters. So Shinran, they would go out and they would try to teach the teachings in other parts of the country. Did he leave the kids and mom at home? No, there's stories about him going out and one of the kids getting sick and them stopping at the side of the road to take care of the kids. One of the traditions I appreciate in Buddhism in general is that we realize that Buddhist teachings is a lifelong path. That when we become older, hopefully, we learn more and are more mature in our thoughts. So in our Buddhist culture in Southeast Asia, people that go out on missionary work are retired people because they have whole life experience to share with other people. It's the same way with Shinran Shonin. He didn't write this book at the beginning of his career. He wrote it at the end of his career, after he'd been married, after he had kids, after he dealt with the everyday situations in life that we deal with. So I think that Shinran, what we call Jodo Shinshu, would be very, very different if he had written this or conceptualized this early in his life. Because he realizes that you don't need to come to temple or church to be part of, hear the teachings of the Dharma and to follow a Buddhist life. His grandson, great-grandson, Renyo Shonin said in his letters, he says, to paraphrase it, he says, if you need to go to temple to be a Buddhist, go to temple. If you need to be a hunter to be a Buddhist, hunt. If you need to fish. A wonderful legacy that we've inherited, that our lifestyle doesn't have to conform for the teachings, but the teachings are there to enrich the life that we have. So today, as we celebrate Shinran Shonin, I hope that you have a little clearer picture of what he was as a person. A lot of people, especially at Pastor, knows that I love history and weird details. During the Meiji era Japan, when Japan modernized, the scholars said, this Shinran guy is too perfect. I don't think he existed. Maybe he was 2 or 3 people. And it wasn't until the 1920s when they found his wife's letters, Ashini's letters, then they said, this is definitely one person. So it's amazing that that Shinran Shonin's thoughts and contributions were so powerful that they attributed it to other people. So if you could please join me in Gasho. O Buddha, the wisdom of immeasurable light, whose body is like a mountain of pure gold, I now, in speech and thought, place hands together and bow my head in worship. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo